Hello, I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly source for news, analysis, and commentary about Wichita and Kansas government and public affairs. We're broadcast on KGPT channel 26.1, also its companion website, kgpt26.com. Some of you know me for my blog, that's the Voice for Liberty at wichitaliberty.org. The motto there is Individual Liberty, Limited Government, and Free Markets in Wichita and Kansas. If you'd like to learn more about the issues covered today or to contact me, I'd recommend visiting wichitaliberty.org. Well, this week, a downtown Wichita project received many economic benefits such as free sales taxes and a bypass of Wichita's Code of Conduct for city council members. The issue had to do with tax increment financing, or TIF. This is a method of economic development whereby property taxes are routed back to a real estate development rather than funding the cost of government, and it's thought that TIF is necessary to make certain types of projects economically feasible. I appeared before the Wichita City Council and shared my concerns about the harmful effects of this type of economic development. And I told the council that regarding this project, it's the Exchange Place project in downtown Wichita, I wanted to remind the council of the entire subsidy package that's being offered to this project. There are historic preservation tax credits, which may amount to 25% of the total project cost. And these credits have the same economic and impact and value as a cash payment, and their cost must be borne by taxpayers. There is $12.5 million in tax increment financing, which reroutes future property tax revenues back to the project for the benefit of its owners. Most everyone else pays property taxes in order to pay for government, not for things that benefit themselves exclusively, or nearly so. There's a federal loan guarantee, which places the federal taxpayer on the hook if this project is not successful. And the owner of this project also seeks to avoid paying sales tax on the purchase of materials. Now, city documents did not say how much this sales tax forgiveness might be worth, but easily could be worth several $1 million. And I said, Mayor and Council, if it is in fact truly necessary to layer on these incentives in order to do a project in downtown Wichita, well, I think we need to ask why. Why is it so difficult to do a project in downtown Wichita? I said that other speakers will probably tell you that rehabilitating historic buildings is expensive. And if so, working on these historic buildings is a choice they make. They and their tenants ought to pay the cost. This is really a lifestyle choice they're making, and nothing more important than that. And I told the council that I was really troubled about the sales tax exemption. We know that just a few months ago our civic leaders, including many on the city council, recommended that Wichitans add more to our sales tax burden in order to pay for a variety of things. And only 14 states apply sales tax to food purchased at grocery stores for home consumption, and of those, Kansas has the second highest statewide rate. We in Kansas, and in Wichita by extension, require low-income families to pay sales tax on their groceries. But today, this council is considering granting an exemption from paying those sales taxes that nearly everyone else has to pay. And I explained to the council that these tax subsidies are not popular with Wichita voters. Last year, when Kansas Policy Institute surveyed Wichita voters, it found that only 34% agreed with the idea of local governments using taxpayer money to provide subsidies for certain businesses for economic development. Then, of course, there is the result of the November sales tax election, where city voters emphatically said no to the council's plan for a sales tax increase. Well, this project is slated to receive many millions in taxpayer-funded subsidy, And now today the City Council proposes to wave a magic wand and eliminate the cost of sales tax for its owners. People notice this arbitrary application of the burden of taxation. They see certain people treated differently under the law, rather than all being treated equally under the law. And people don't like this, I told the council. It breeds distrust in government. And I explained that this council could help restore some of this trust by not issuing the industrial revenue bonds and the accompanying sales tax exemption. Now, in response to my remarks, City Council member and mayoral candidate Jeff Longwell had a few comments, as we see here in video from the meeting.
I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Weeks? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next speaker.
Here, I've got one quick question for our city manager.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Layton, he mentioned something with regard to tax increment financing being rerouted for the benefit of the owners of the project, and I think people need to understand that tax increment financing has some pretty strict guidelines on how that money can be used, and I believe it's for the greater good of the public. Can you share some of those guidelines?
Mayor, members of the council, I'm not well versed in the state law, and I'll let the city attorney address any specific provisions, but under the council policy as revised when you adopted the downtown master plan, our assistance for downtown projects is to be confined to improvements for public benefit. And so in this case, the tax increment finance dollars will be used for the construction and construction of the garage. And that garage is to be used and open for the public. And that is consistent with what you did in Block 1 and what we're doing with other investments, including the remodeling of the garage on Main. So again, that's the council policy to make sure that the public as a whole benefits from the tax increment
so the
investment.
TIF financing is being rerouted for a public project, basically.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks. In our last segment, we saw City Council member and mayoral candidate Jeff Longwell contesting the idea that tax increment financing funds are being rerouted back to the benefit of the owners of the project. We're getting a public parking garage, is the city's response to my claim. Well, let's look at the numbers and see if we can evaluate this situation. Now, according to city documents, the project, this is Exchange Place in downtown Wichita, will hold 230 apartments, and the parking garage that the city is paying for is planned to hold 273 parking stalls. Now, you can imagine that many of the apartment renters or buyers will want a guaranteed parking space available to them at all times. And in fact, an early version of the development plan states a minimum of 195 spaces will be allocated for use by the apartments. The remaining 103 spaces will be for public parking. So the city is giving up $12.5 million of tax revenue to gain 103 parking spaces. That's $121,000 per parking spot. You can buy a very nice house in Wichita for that. And the actual situation could be even worse for the city's taxpayers. The development agreement states a minimum of 103 parking spaces shall be set aside in the parking garage for public parking, and the balance for the exclusive use of the residents and guests of Exchange Place Building and the Douglas Building. But it also holds this. This allocation can be revised by the developer as market experience may demonstrate a need to reallocate parking spaces with consent of city representatives, and it says which consent shall not be unreasonably withheld or delayed. So we see that a large portion of the parking garage is not a public benefit. It's for the benefit of the apartment developer. And if not for the city building the garage, the developer would need to provide these parking spaces in order to be able to rent the apartments. And because of tax increment financing, the developer's own property taxes are being used to build the garage instead of paying for government like almost all other property taxes do, like I'm sure your property taxes do. And if this was not true, there would be no benefit to the developer for using tax increment financing. And if tax increment financing did not have a real cost to the rest of the city's taxpayers, well, we might ask this question: why not use TIF more extensively? Why can't everyone benefit from their own tax increment financing district if it really has no cost? Well, in his remarks, the Wichita City Manager mentioned the Block 1 garage as a public asset, as it was financed also by tax increment financing. So let's look at the statistics there. According to the revised budget for the project, the plan for that garage is 270 stalls. But 125 stalls are allocated for the hotel, that's the Ambassador Hotel, and 100 are allocated for the Slauson development, and 45 are allocated now for the Kansas Leadership Center building. That leaves precisely 0 stalls for public use. That's right. If these 3 businesses make full use of their allocation of parking stalls, there will be 0 stalls available for the public to use. Now, it's not quite that simple, as Slauson will use its spaces only during the workday, leaving them available to the public on evenings and weekends. Perhaps the same arrangement will be made for the Kansas Leadership Center. And with the garage being near the Interest Bank Arena, well, it's available for parking for events at the arena. Well, except there aren't very many events in the arena. In some months, there are no events. And you can see that something that is promoted for the public good really turns out to be narrowly focused on satisfying private interests. Well, the manager in his remarks also mentioned the garage on Main Street. According to city documents, the cost to rehabilitate that garage is almost $10 million, which will create 550 parking stalls. But the city is renting 180 of them to a politically connected company at a monthly rent of just $35. We looked at this a few months ago and saw how bad this deal is for city taxpayers. Well, in his remarks, Mayor Carl Brewer thanked city staff and the developers for working collectively as a team, he said. He criticized those who say, in his words, "Let's not do anything. Let's just see where the chips may fall." As an alternative, the mayor said, "We can come together. We can work together. We can work collectively together, and we can bring about the change and form it the way we want." Now, these remarks illustrate the mayor's hostility towards free markets, that is, to thousands and millions and even billions of people trading freely in order to figure out how to allocate scarce resources. The mayor likens the marketplace of free people to a random event, where the chips may fall, he said. But that's not how markets work. Markets are people planning for themselves, using their knowledge and preference and resources in order to build things they want and what they think others will want too. That's because in markets, The only way you can earn a profit is by doing things that other people want. You have to please customers in order to earn a profit. But Wichita Mayor Carl Brewer says we need to work collectively together. He says we can form the future the way we want. Well, who is this we he's talking about? Well, as we've seen, the dynamics of free markets results in people doing what other people want. But the we the mayor talks about are politicians, bureaucrats, cronies, and do-gooders deciding themselves how they want things to be done and using your money to do it. That reduces your economic freedom. Your money is directed towards satisfying the goals of politicians and bureaucrats rather than actual, real people. And here's how bad this deal really is for Wichita. In my remarks to the council, I also said this. I said I'd like to also remind the people of Wichita that some of their taxpayer-funded subsidies are earmarked to fund a bailout for a politically connected construction company for work they did on a different project, one not related to Exchange Place except through having common ownership in the past. And I told the council I don't think it is good public policy for the city to act as a collection agent for a private debt that has been difficult to collect. I was referring to the fact that the Exchange Place project started as an endeavor of the Minnesota guys, two developers who bought a lot of property in downtown Wichita and didn't do very well in the end. And they both have been indicted on 61 counts of securities violations in relation to their work in downtown Wichita. One of the projects of the Minnesota guys was the Wichita Executive Center on North Market Street. And the Minnesota guys still owe money to contractors on that project, and some of the taxpayer funding for the Exchange Place project will be used to pay off those contractors, on a different unrelated project. So why, you may be asking, is the city acting as collection agent for these contractors? Well, there's an easy answer to that. Money is owed to Key Construction Company. We've talked about this politically connected construction firm in the past. Through generous campaign contributions and friendships, Key Construction Company manages to gain things like overpriced no-bid contracts and other subsidies from the city. This is a problem. Dave Wells, the president of Key Construction, is a friend of the mayor, as well as a frequent and heavy campaign financier for the mayor and other council members. And the mayor voted for benefits for Wells and his company. That is a violation of Wichita City Code, or at least it should be. Here's an excerpt from Section 2.04.050 of the Code of Ethics for Council Members from the Wichita City Code as passed in 2008. It says, council members shall refrain from making decisions involving business associates, customers, clients, friends, and competitors. That's the law of the city of Wichita. Well, Dave Wells of Key Construction and Mayor Carl Brewer are friends. The mayor has said so. But the city of Wichita's official position is that this law, the law that seems to plainly say that city council members cannot vote for benefits for their friends, well, the city says this law does not need to be followed. Even children can see that elected officials should not vote economic benefits for their friends. But the city of Wichita cannot see that. There's much research that shows that tax increment financing is not an overall benefit to a city's economy. Yes, it's good for the people who receive it, like the developers of the Exchange Place project and the mayor's friends and cronies. But for cities as a whole, the benefit has found to be missing. And some studies have found a negative effect of TIF on economic progress and jobs. That's right. A city is worse off as a whole for using tax increment financing. The evolving episode involving Exchange Place, the massive layer of taxpayer subsidies, the cronyism, the inability of the mayor and council members to understand the economic facts and realities of the transactions they approve, the hostility towards free markets and their benefits as opposed to government planning of the economy. All of this contributes to the poor performance of the Wichita area economy. And this is not an academic exercise or an abstract discussion. Real people are and have been hurt by this. Mayor Brewer has just a month left in office, and there will be a new mayor after that. We, the people of Wichita, we have to hope that a new mayor and possibly new council members will chart a different course for economic development in Wichita. And that's it for Wichita Liberty TV this week. I'm Bob Weeks.